sorry to cut you off. Was there more you wanted to say about that?
That's fine.
Okay. A couple of things. Who is funding research? We were talking last week about cancer, and we talked about research in that field, and the funding staying flat while inflation is going up. Is there a role for the federal government to play here, or is there a component to that we need to talk about? What's going on there in terms of research? That, by the way, the storm shelters, I get under this table, and for the rest of you,
the rest are on our own. Is that right?
Legally, I didn't say that, but
So there is a role for the federal government in that there really does need to be an investment in research. So through some of the federal agencies, this is the time to be investing, not pulling back. And I know there's a big push to see more funding going not only to NIH but also to NSF, because that's where the basic research occurs, and the innovation and the applications will not be there in 10 years if you don't have that foundation. That being said, I think that we all have an obligation to think about how we can come up with some very innovative partnerships to capitalize on what's happening in the entrepreneurial world, in industry, but also in education across the K through grade continuum. So this is the time for us to be sitting around at the table and coming up with ways to not just have a bubble within industry and a bubble within academia, and a bubble within job growth in the city, but we need to figure out how we can work together and expand and leverage what we are all doing at our various institutions. So partnerships, I think, is key.
I've seen a real shift over the years of the interest in these broad partnerships, and academics especially enjoying interacting. We certainly share a pipeline with students. We're the employer of students, but we have people moving back and forth and getting applied training in a company and going back and finishing their graduate work. We're collaborating on projects earlier than ever before. And there's an openness on both sides that wasn't always there. So it's a pretty exciting time, and I agree it's absolutely necessary, the innovation that we need to be successful and to meet the rather grand challenges we have is going to require that sort of boundary-breaking collaboration.
were you born too late, and you wish you were as a part of the 1960s space race? I don't know why we keep going back at that. Or are you just more excited to be here now?
I'm pretty happy where I am.
Good, because our time machine is broken.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Cape Canaveral, Florida, right next to where they had the shuttles off, and it was an amazing thing to see and watch. But at the same time, I do think our generation has seen an absolutely incredible change in our times. I remember our first personal computer when I was in like third grade, and the change that we've seen through that. So I think that innovation is probably better supported now than ever before, and it's pretty exciting to be here in this time. On the academics note, like we're saying, I do think that the lack of funding that we're seeing from some of the traditional resources is causing academicians to be a lot more wary, or not more wary, but more conscious of what their end product would be, which is actually probably for the better for a lot of reasons, because what they do now needs to usually have some sort of utility if they're going to be able to partner with private groups.
I also think that if you compare 50 years ago to what happened in the 60s with the space race to today, there are some interesting similarities but differences. In the 60s with the space race, it really was coming out of the defense. A lot of it was being driven by defense technologies and being applied for a broad public policy purpose, and it was very centralized. I think this time around, 50 years later, there's been a democratization of entrepreneurship and innovation. It's grassroots. It's growing up. It's not being led by the government in the way that it was, and not invested in by the government in the way it was 50 years ago, and that's all good. So it's interesting that 50 years. I think that we had a tremendous push 50 years ago, and I see another tremendous push that's been happening in the last 10 to 15 years, and I think it's going to continue.
Let me say that that's a look back 50 years. If we look forward 50 years with population growth and changing demographics, we're going to have to produce as much food in the next 50 years as the last 10,000 years combined. The only way to get there, to meet this grand challenge, is through innovation. High science that's funded by the government, applications of that science to have innovation. We're going to have to do that with less inputs, less water, less soil. That's a green revolution that's really tough, and it's a grand challenge that's out there. I have no doubt we're going to meet it, but the only way we meet it is working together and fostering innovation.
Say that again, because I'm going to use this at a party, and I'm not going to feel confident because it's going to sound so unbelievable.
Yeah. If you look at where the population's going and the changing diets, in the next 50 years, we're going to have to produce as much food as the last 10,000 years, beginning of agriculture to today, combined. That's our challenge. We're going to have to do it with less inputs. And again, the only way to get there is innovation.
I hope you're on that.
We're on that. We are on that, and we do think that innovation is the only way to get there. And it's going to take the combination. It'll take a variety of platforms. We work in breeding and biotechnology, but we're really excited about the promise of data science and bringing engineering and IT together with agronomy and soil science and all of these areas. And I think innovation occurs in the boundaries. And so we're bringing them together to try to innovate, but then around the collaborations that we've been talking about, the innovation that occurs in startups, the innovation that occurs in collaborating with our farmer customers. It's going to be wide open, and it's going to be important for that to come together to meet these grand challenges.
Okay, so I hope you guys are on that too, then. Because they're going to need, I didn't understand 4 of those words.
Well, just this past week, we joined 120 other universities in committing to addressing the grand challenges that have been expressed by the National Academy of Engineering, the Millennium Development Goals, the White House innovation, strategic innovation priorities. Like you said, it takes a collaboration of a number of universities to produce the graduates that we need over the next decade to address these grand challenges. And to your point about what's different or what's changing, it's democratized where we all feel like we can do it. We understand the process of innovation. We understand where we need to put our resources, where we need to put our efforts, where we need to take ideas. How do we get that from ideation to development to commercialization? And again, it's going to take a group effort.
I'm guessing you would say it's definitely democratized. I mean, the 3D printer you can get for less than the PC he got in 3rd grade, and we're not even counting inflation. That's just real numbers that's probably
Right.
less.
Yeah, absolutely. And while I absolutely agree with every person here that talks about the grand challenges and the big picture and how we need to get various IT and scientists and get all of these wonderful interactions happening, I actually see it from a much lower point of view. I actually go back to the grassroots that you mentioned earlier. We need to get people exposed to this stuff. I mean, that's what hackerspaces do. And really, the idea of the hackerspace, makerspace movement has really moved into, we've got spaces popping up at the universities. We've got one that just popped up at the Science Center. We've got ones that are popping up at little schools. The concept of just building a workshop where people can just access this kind of technology and just have the freedom to create and innovate unfettered by monetary concerns, whether or not it's going to ever make any money. From my point of view, from our point of view, that doesn't matter. That can happen, and it's great when it does, but it's not the primary purpose of what we're doing. We're trying to get technology, knowledge, and creativity, ability into the hands of people so that people can understand that their world is a thing that they can change and they can mold. We have a society that tells us that we should be in kind of this career path where we should go here, get a job, work this, and then we survive, we do well. But our world is different. Our world is changing. The internet and our connectivity has really brought us together and really brought knowledge to everyone. And so anyone can take technology and they can make it their own and they can innovate. And any of the great things that are changing the world are coming from people who are doing this. There was a 12-year-old kid who has changed the face of prosthetics completely because he printed one at home on his printer. And now there are people getting $100 arms that cost $50,000 otherwise. So, I mean, anybody can change the world.
Sounds like a very American manifesto you just given us there, too.
you know,
I like
that's
it.
what I meant.
Oh, that's good. I was going to say, we've kind of left out this side of
I was going to say, listening to the kinds of problems that these individuals, these companies, institutions are solving really underscores this opportunity for St. Louis to be able to do well in terms of economic vitality by doing good, solving the world's problems, improving the human condition. And St. Louis can benefit economically and job creation and really make our mark in terms of improving the world.
I also think that there's a social imperative that goes with this democratization. Globally, what's happening with wages is the downward migration, and I think this country is trying to come to grips with that because we've had a high wage structure. And the arc of technology and the arc of innovation is to have technology do more and economize on the workforce. So we're still producing babies all around the world, people that have to have meaningful jobs. And I think that in this country, and I think in St. Louis, this concept of entrepreneurship and trying to capture the imagination, our children's imaginations, you can do something. You can do it with your hands. You can create, not that it's bad to be a worker for a company, but you can create a company yourself. You can be your own boss if you want to be. And I think there needs to be a lot more companies to emerge in Middle America, and across the world, in order to put people meaningfully to work and be able to contribute to the world at large.
I've left you guys out in the post-show. Any final thoughts that are stewing in your head?
Sure. So my big one, because I have peers that are also pursuing startups, is not what happens the first time around. It's not what happens when you first try to put an idea from paper into the real world. It's the second and third times. And as a city, because most things fail. The vast majority fail. I've failed more times than I could ever talk about. And I think that's where programs as well need to emphasize that it's about the learning the first few times around. And that's what these STEM programs, STEAM and design programs are doing. Because when someone experiences the application of thought and everything that's on the blackboard into the real world and can go iterate through that and develop meaningful products, such as the prosthetic hand, which is the coolest thing ever. That's where stories get built, that's where inventors are made.